We're a little over halfway through the group stage of the ASEAN Mitsubishi Electric Cup of the 2024 edition. So I wanted to talk to you guys about some of the most important storylines, what we've seen so far through 2 to 3 games for each team, who's leading the pack, who's doing decent, who deserves honorable mentions, who's been disappointing. We're going to talk about everything I've noticed so far. But before we get into it, if you guys want more ASEAN Championship 2024 content, make sure to subscribe down below. We're going to be highlighting the Philippines, Indonesia, Laos, Cambodia, a whole bunch of teams today. So make sure to stick around so you can hear your team and let me know in the comments down below your opinion so far. So firstly, because my horse in the race is the Philippines, because I am Filipino, I do want to talk about them a little bit and how disappointing they look. If there's one word I want to use to describe the outcomes so far in the ASEAN Championship, it is disappointing. I may have set the bar a little bit too high, or my expectations a little bit, at least during and after that first game. That first game against Myanmar, I thought they looked pretty good. They had some opportunities. They unfortunately conceded off of a set piece free kick with a great one, may I add, a great one by Myanmar. Otherwise, I thought they played well and they just couldn't finish, and that was the only reason they drew. They drew the first game, at least it wasn't a loss. They still get a point, then they move forward. But then they drew to Laos away. And boy, my hopes for this team are just down here right now. Honestly, they're so low right now. I don't really see them making it out of the group. Unfortunately, to me, that seems like it's going to be the case. They still have yet to play Indonesia. They still haven't played Vietnam. They do that. Indonesia game is away, and Vietnam is at home, but Vietnam is top of the table. Vietnam is one of the top two favorites to win this entire thing. And the Philippines honestly have not provided a single bit of hope going into those 2 games. I don't see a result against Vietnam. Maybe we see a result against Indonesia, depending on how they are after their next game. But I just don't see anything happening with this Philippines team, which is really unfortunate because I thought they were going to be able to do something. I thought that with Indonesia bringing their U22 team, Philippines could maybe sneak into that second place spot. But there's a chance that they finish the tournament without a win, which I think is the first time that's happened since I think it was 2007 was the last time that they haven't won a game at the ASEAN Championship. And it's just disappointing. This ASCO team obviously does not know how to play with each other yet. A lot of new players, a lot of naturalized players, and it just doesn't seem like they know how to play against a highly aggressive and competitive ASEAN region. Now, obviously, there are some teams in here where, in relation to the rest of the world, yeah, maybe they're not going to do that good. There's not no chance of any World Cup qualification or anything. But amongst themselves in this region, every team is going to come out and play. And I think they weren't expecting that from both Myanmar and Laos, especially from Laos away. And obviously, every away game in this tournament is an insanely different away game than normal. It just is proven to be difficult for a lot of these teams in the past and in this tournament, and is no different for the Philippines. Myanmar and Laos were the arguable 2 easiest opponents in this group, and to make it out of that with 2 points from 2 games, not even a win, is very sad, very disappointing. If they had at least gotten one win, they'd be tied with Indonesia right now, and then there's still a pretty decent chance that it would go down to the last game against Indonesia, and they would make it out of the group stage in some capacity. I don't see it right now. I don't see Indonesia falling enough. I don't see Vietnam falling at all to allow the Philippines to get into that second place spot, and that's so disappointing. If you're a fan of the Auscos, let me know your thoughts in the comments down below, because obviously you just heard mine, and I'm so disappointed in this year's version of the Philippines national team, which sucks because we've been dealing with this for I feel like a long time now. We haven't been the same team since what, like 2010? It's been a long time. It has been a very long time for the Philippines to have any bit of football prowess in this region, which sucks because I think the Philippine team can be so good. I think Albert Capellas should stick around for a while, and hope he does, because the way he's talking is that he's going to be in here for the long run. I hope this team gets better. The team is still somewhat decently young, so there is room for improvement. Just in this tournament would have been the perfect opportunity, because it's going to be a rough next couple years afterwards. Briefly, I want to talk about Indonesia as well. Indonesia are such an interesting team this year. Now, of course, I put my expectations a little bit high for them. Of course, I did not realize that they were only going to be sending a U22 team. So I appreciate everybody in the comments who did let me know about that, because now I do know. And you know what? Even with the U22 team, I do think Indonesia are making a good claim for themselves here. They're putting on a good show. I think Indonesia, I don't know about without a doubt, but they are quickly becoming one of the best in the region, and finally becoming a continental level team to compete with the rest of Asia. And I think it's very evident here, even though it's a U22 team, I think it's the youngest team on average here in this tournament. Even with that, they're still doing pretty solid. They're still sitting in second place in this group with this young of a team. And to me, that tells me that Indonesia have a good young core moving forward, and they can really expand upon their current success in the World Cup qualifiers for Indonesia. They could expand upon that moving forward with this youth team, and they could continue to be a powerhouse in this region. I hope they do, but I do say they deserve some credit for how they've played so far. Obviously, they could have done a lot better if they had their first team, and if they had their first team, I think they would have been one of the favorites, if not the second or third. But with the team that they brought, they're still doing an admirable job. I do see them moving forward into the semifinals, and even then, a semifinals appearance with the U22 squad, maybe even a finals appearance, who knows? Very good. You can't deny how awesome that is for Indonesia, if I'm being honest. And you know what? For them, it's a really good sign because I don't see, like, let's say if any other team in this tournament brought a U22 side, I don't see another team being able to do as much as Indonesia have done so far. So good on them. Now, I just mentioned some other favorites. I do think Thailand are still the number one favorites, and Vietnam are a fairly close second. I do think that is going to be the final matchup. There are no other teams right now that are telling me that they can have an equal shot at making the final game. Maybe Singapore, but at the same time, Singapore have not really played the tough teams yet, so I do want to wait to see how they play, and then maybe in our group stage recap, I will talk about that. Maybe I have a completely different mindset by then. But Singapore have yet to play the hard tough teams. Vietnam and Thailand have done an admirable job. They have done what they've needed to do so far, and they both sit atop their groups. I do think they're going to be the number 1 and 2 going into the final and the semifinals. I really don't see them faltering either. I mean, both teams they're known for how good they are in this region. I don't see them getting any worse as time moves on. So, good on them. The only thing that would change that is, of course, maybe there's players that leave or injured or whatever. Hopefully, there's no players that are leaving. I'm going to use this to segue into Malaysia's players that have left, because Malaysia, unfortunately, lost, I think, 4 or 5 players, one of them to injury, and the other 4 are all of Sabah FC players. So they did go back to their clubs to focus on the quarterfinal of the Malaysia Cup. Now, it's up to you if you think it's worth it. If you think they should have done that or should have stayed, that's personal opinion and very subjective. But they did leave, so Malaysia will not have as good of a team as they have started with, unfortunately. And as a result, that's why I can't put them in the top 2-3 favorites yet. But Malaysia in itself, though, I feel like have been a very, very confusing side even before those players left. They drew to Cambodia, who admittedly are a very, very good Cambodia side. And I do think a lot of credit needs to go towards Cambodia by the end of this tournament, because they're slowly becoming one of the better teams in the region. And I do think it's been a long time coming, but with a lot of these naturalized players, they have the opportunity to finally compete with the Thailand and Vietnam and whatnot. And I think they kind of are making a little bit of a name for themselves. So if you're noticing that, good on you. I think everybody needs to begin to notice. So they drew with Cambodia, and then they almost lost to Timor-Leste, the same Timor-Leste that lost by 9 or 10 to Thailand in the first game. They almost lost to them, except for 2 goals in that the last 25 minutes from Malaysia. So good on them, but the fact that they have, done such an odd, confusing job of getting here. I believe this in 3rd place right now, and they still have an opportunity to go above Singapore at some point. It's very interesting for them. It's really hard for me to say what they're going to look like in a week or two, because every game they play differently. Every game, either they show up or they don't. But it's worked enough. I mean, they have an opportunity to move to the semifinals at some point. They played very well against Thailand, and that was the first game that they lost a lot of their players. They did very good. They only lost 1-0, and good for them, because Thailand, like I said, are without a doubt the number 1 favorites. Malaysia, to be able to almost take them toe to toe, it's a good time for things to come. But when they move forward into the next game, maybe the semifinals, which Malaysia are we going to see? Are we going to see that Thailand game Malaysia, or are we going to see that Timor-Leste game Malaysia? Remains to be seen. I hope we do see that Thailand game Malaysia, because that's how they need to be playing if they want to make it to the final. They can't be almost losing to the worst team in this tournament if they want to have any bit of success moving forward. So Malaysia are very, very confusing to me, but not saying that they're bad or anything. Keep an eye on them for sure, because they still could do something. They very well have a good chance at making the semifinal or final, so keep an eye on them for sure. The last team I really do want to highlight is going to be Laos, and Laos, I think, are going to leave this tournament happy. I don't think they're going to make it out of the group, unfortunately, but even then, they should be pretty proud of how they've played so far. They drew against the Philippines. Granted, it was an own goal, but still, they drew against the Philippines. They drew against Indonesia, like I've already said, are one of the best teams in this tournament, even with their U22 team. And then even the game right before the tournament, they drew with Thailand. Now, obviously, these aren't wins, but draws against these teams for Laos is very, very good. I don't think anybody expected Laos to come into this tournament with much of an impact, if I'm being honest. I did not. If you go back to that video that I did starting at the start of the tournament, I didn't really think Laos was going to do much, but they've done a pretty good job, and they have a chance of even finishing above the likes of the Philippines, which would be a pretty good accomplishment for Laos. I just wasn't expecting this much. So good on them. I do think, like I said, they're going to leave the tournament with their heads held high, no matter how the other games go for them. I think they should be very, very proud of how they've played, and I hope it carries over into the future because Laos is a team that, could make this region a lot more competitive. I think they're just behind Cambodia by a little bit, to be fair, not like right just behind them, but the explosion of Laos and Myanmar would absolutely be pretty good for the next ASEAN Championship edition and just for the region as a whole and Asia as a whole. Asia, I think, needs a lot more competitive teams to match up against, the best of the best. And this is the opportunity to do so. And I think they're taking advantage of that, which is so, so nice to see. They also have the second youngest squad here in the entire tournament, which makes it that much more admirable. And it is a great sign for the future under Ha Hyuk-jun. I do think that because they have a young squad, because of the success, they're going to carry it forward and hopefully improve more and more and more and more. These players are going to remember this tournament. These players are going to want to match this tournament. And I do think it's going to get even better for Laos in the coming years over time. And then before I get onto my predictions for the rest of the tournament, I want to mention a couple honorable performances of teams that I have not mentioned so far. Like I said, that Timor-Leste one was this close to beating Malaysia. This close. Wow, what a result that would have been. After losing 10-1, I think it was 11-1 to Thailand, a win against arguably the second favorite for the group, Malaysia would have been amazing. Would have been a historic win from the only team that had to qualify for this tournament. Unfortunately, it didn't happen, but Timor-Leste should still be pretty proud after that game. I think that's going to be as close to success as they would have for the rest of the tournament. So I do think they should appreciate that. And then my other honorable performance I do want to mention is Myanmar. And Myanmar barely lost to Indonesia. And, they've been solid so far. They've had a draw against the Philippines, like I said. Granted, I think they look like the worst team, but they still got that draw, and that's all that matters. All that matters in this sport is you get the results, right? So having to do that for them is very good. And then, like I said, barely lost to Indonesia. Would have been an amazing draw for them or win if they could have got it. Fortunately, it wasn't, but you have to be proud of that as well from Myanmar. So Timor-Leste and Myanmar, be proud. Still a good showing, and they're not getting steamrolled like I kind of expected them to. So good on them. So now we can talk about the rest of the tournament predictions. And like I said, I don't see another final besides Thailand, Vietnam right now. I need to win on Singapore. I need to win on Malaysia. Those two teams are the only two that I'm very, very confident in making to the final. I do think that's what it's going to be again, and I do think Thailand's going to win again over Vietnam in the same final as it was in the last edition of the tournament. It's going to be the same thing. It always is. Typically, every year in Thailand are going to remain the most winning and successful side in this cup's history. As for the Philippines, like I said, I don't see anything happening with them. Singapore, I don't see much happening with them. Now I know that they are in second place right now. They haven't dropped points, I believe, but still, they haven't played the biggest teams in that group, Thailand and Malaysia. And those two games are going to be the ones that really, really show me whether or not they're prepared to go the distance. I haven't seen it yet. I don't believe in it. I don't think that they're going to do too hot in those games, but I hope they prove me wrong for the sake of competition. I do think they can. I just wouldn't know. We'll see. Those are going to be games. I think those are the two of the most important games in the entire group stage left to be played. I would keep an eye on those if you were not planning on it. Make sure to watch those because those are the most important ones. And then as for the rest of the teams, we got Timor-Leste, Cambodia, Myanmar, Laos. I don't see them doing a whole lot more moving forward. I don't really see any of them making a push for the top two. But again, I hope one of those teams proves me wrong because for the sake of competition, for the sake of entertainment, and for the sake of the overall football quality in this region, I think we need it, and I think we would all love it. Otherwise, I'm still going to stick with Thailand as being my number one. If you have a different opinion, let me know in the comments down below. But I do believe Thailand is going to be the ones that take it home in the end once more, and they're going to win it for the third time in a row. But otherwise, Vietnam, I wouldn't be opposed to Vietnam winning it at all. I do really like Vietnam's team. I always have. And I do think it's time that Vietnam really, 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 really push for that number one spot in the entire region. I think winning this, even though yes, it's not the most official tournament in the world, it's only hosted by this sub region. I do think it'll be very, very important for Vietnam to win this, and I hope they do. If not, let's just make it a competitive final. That's all that matters to me. But yeah, that's gonna be it for me, guys. If you guys I've gotten to this point in the video, please leave a like because it helps us out so much. And then let me know in the comments down below your opinion so far on this tournament because I want to hear what everybody else is saying. I want to see what's going on in everybody else's minds. Because there's a lot to be played. There's still a lot to be played. There's still a lot of things to happen. I could be completely wrong in everything I said. And if you think you're right, let me know in the comments down below. Otherwise, make sure to subscribe for more Asian football content. We're going to cover the rest of the ASEAN Cup. We're going to cover the AFC Cup, the Asian Cup qualifiers starting in March, more of World Cup qualifications starting in March, all that. So we're going to cover as much as we can. So make sure to subscribe and turn notifications on so you know when we release those videos and you can be one of the first to interact with us. Otherwise, we're going to see you guys hopefully in future videos. And yeah, Take it easy, guys.